I think we can all agree that in the vast majority of cases, if a closer has a lot of saves, he's probably a good pitcher. Typically, relief pitchers that earn saves are securing small leads in tight games. There's only so much room for error on the pitcher's part, let alone any. There are rare exceptions where pitchers can earn saves with a large lead, but those are few and far in between. That's why it's rare to see pitchers save a lot of games while also having a high ERA. In theory, the more runs one allows, the more leads he'll give up, and the fewer saves he'll earn. While this all sounds obvious, there was one pitcher that completely ignored that logic. He had many saves in spite of a high ERA and other terrible stats. It's by far the weirdest season a closer has ever had, and it makes absolutely no sense. The pitcher in question is former big leaguer Shawn Chacon. Shakon played in Major League Baseball for 8 seasons from 2001 to 2008. He played for 4 teams, but spent the most time with the Colorado Rockies. In his career, he pitched in over 250 games and started over 130 while throwing over 900 innings. He holds a lifetime ERA of 4.99, adjusted ERA of 95, a whip of 1.509, struck out 6.0 batters per 9 innings, and earned 6.5 WAR. While his career may seem mundane, he had a rather interesting and unique season, and one that probably should not have happened in the first place. You see, Shakon was a starting pitcher through most of his big league career. Through his first 3 seasons, he starred every single game he appeared in, and that includes the minor leagues as well. Shakon appeared in over 100 games in various minor league levels from 1996 through 2003, and there was only a single game he did not start. It's also not as if he was a terrible starting pitcher. From 2001 through 2003, Shakon threw over 400 innings across 71 starts, earning a 5.10 ERA and 99 adjusted ERA. For steroid-era cores, that's honestly kind of remarkable. Not to mention, 2003 was his best season so far. Shakon started off the season amazingly. Through his first 16 starts at the end of June, he was 11-3 with a 3.91 ERA. Those 11 wins were leading the National League at the time, and he was making a real push for 20 wins, if not for a shoulder injury that derailed his season. Bottom line, that was all a long explanation to simply say that Shawn Chacon was a starting pitcher, had 0 experience as a reliever, and arguably was Colorado's ace. It would not shock anybody if he was the opening day starter for 2004. As much sense as that would have made, what did the Colorado Rockies do? They made the bold decision to move Shawn Chacon to the bullpen as the team's closer. Look, I'm no big league manager and never held any type of coaching job, but really? I honestly don't get it, and we could spend an hour here dissecting why it was a weird move, but just know that this idea came from none other than the Rockies manager at the time, Clint Hurdle. Hopefully, that should not surprise you. Anyway, now as the team's main closer, how did Shakon perform? Did he rise to one of the top relievers in baseball? Nope, quite the opposite. In 2004, Shawn Chacon threw 63 1/3 innings across 66 games out of relief. He went 1-9 with a 7.11 ERA, 70 adjusted ERA, a 1.942 whip, struck out 7.4 batters per 9 innings, and earned negative 1.5 WAR. I don't think I need to go into detail about how terrible that season is, but I will anyway. There were 273 pitchers in 2004 to throw at least 60 innings, and Shakon ranked second to last in ERA and 7th to last in adjusted ERA. If we look strictly at relief pitchers, in which there were 99 with at least 60 innings, Shakon is last in ERA and second to last in adjusted ERA. His whip, WAR, and losses are also within the bottom 2 among relief pitchers. My personal favorite aspect of his year was that Shakon not only walked and struck out the exact same amount of batters, he also allowed the exact same amount of runs. Seriously. Shakon had 52 strikeouts, 52 walks, and allowed 52 runs. To his credit, 2 of those runs were unearned, so it was only 50 earned runs allowed. Forget strikeout to walk ratio. I want to see a new stat, strikeout and walk to run ratio. Before continuing, I also need to point out that this is one of the worst seasons by a relief pitcher of all time. Throughout all of MLB history through 2023, There have been exactly 5,765 occurrences of a relief pitcher throwing at least 60 innings in a single season. I should know, I counted. Out of that immense group of pitching seasons, Shakon ranks inside the bottom 25 in ERA and WHIP, bottom 70 in WAR, and bottom 150 in adjusted ERA. Again, that's out of nearly 5,800. Those rankings speak for themselves. Now here's the interesting part. In spite of being the worst relief pitcher in 2004 and having one of the worst seasons by a reliever of all time, Shawn Chacon had 35 saves. That's equal parts incredible and baffling. How on earth does a pitcher with those stats save so many games? It seems impossible that a pitcher could accomplish this, and for good reason, as Shakon's season is nothing short of an anomaly. To see just how much of an anomaly Shawn Chacon's 2004 season was, let's compare it to other seasons all time. First, how does he fare to other pitchers with as many or more saves? In the history of Major League Baseball through 2023, there have been exactly 337 occurrences of a pitcher saving at least 35 games in a single season. Shawn Chacon has the worst ERA, adjusted ERA, WHIP, WAR, even the worst strikeout to walk ratio. Don't worry though, he only had the third most losses and the fifth most blown saves of any of those 35 save pitchers. Now, it's one thing to be in dead last in those stats, but Shakon isn't just in last, he has the worst stats by a large margin. His 7.11 ERA is nearly 2 runs higher than the second worst mark. The difference between Shawn Chacon with the highest ERA and Ty Worrell with the second highest is roughly the same as Worrell at second and Will Smith at 58th. Shakon absolutely lapped everybody that matched his save total, but what about comparing him to other pitchers with the same stats? Among pitchers with an equal or higher ERA, Shakon is just one of 2 ever to save more than 15 games, and looking at pitchers with an equal or lower adjusted ERA, only 2 pitchers are within 10 saves of Shakon. One stat that stands out, however, is WHIP. For pitchers with a WHIP at or higher than 1.942, Shakon has exactly 2.5 times more saves than the second highest mark, the only such pitcher with as many as 15 saves. There has legitimately never been somebody that bad in all areas to save that many games, and in certain areas, no pitcher is even close to matching his stats. The big question is, how is this possible? How can somebody have a season that poor, but still save many games? I bet some people may be thinking the same thing right now, that Shakon's stats, especially his ERA, are unjustly skewed due to a small number of really bad games. If not for a handful of appearances, his stats would be much better, right? I thought this at first, and it's actually something more commonly seen than you'd think. Perhaps the most famous example of this scenario involves Joe Borowski of the 2007 Cleveland Indians, where he led the American League with 45 saves while recording an ERA of 5.07. That year, Borowski allowed 37 earned runs in 65 2/3 innings across 69 games pitched. However, over a third of those runs were allowed in just 1 2/3 innings across 3 games. If we eliminate those 3 games, Borowski's ERA drops to a solid 3.23 mark in 64 innings. A similar situation occurred to current Astros pitcher Josh Hader. In 2022, Hader threw 50 innings across 56 games, earning 36 saves in spite of a 5.22 ERA. However, if we remove just 2 games of his where he allowed a combined 12 runs, his ERA would drop to 3.10 in 49 1/3 innings. Long story short, in the rare cases where pitchers save many games and had a high ERA, it's almost always because the ERA is misleading due to a small number of games affecting overall stats. Does this apply to Shawn Chacon? Well, yes, but not as much as you'd think. If we remove Chacon's 4 worst games from this season, his ERA drops to 5.40, which would still rank as the highest ever for a 35 save pitcher. If we remove Chacon's 6 worst games, or 11% of his appearances, his ERA only drops to 4.58, still outrageously high for someone to save 35 games. I thought maybe Coors Field could have inflated Chacon's ERA, but that idea isn't entirely accurate. Yes, Chacon's road ERA was almost 2 full runs lower, but his ERA away from Coors was 6.19 compared to a mark of 8.09 at home. It's only when we look at his splits do we see how Shakon was able to save 35 games in spite of a 7.11 ERA. In 44 save situations, Shakon had an ERA of 6.59, but that includes an ERA of 2.34 in the 35 games where he earned a save. In his 9 blown saves, an ERA of 25.83. That's 22 earned runs allowed in 7 2/3 innings. Don't get me wrong, 9 blown saves is a lot, but 22 earned runs? Also to point out, a 2.34 ERA in games where he earned a save actually isn't that great. Looking back at those 337 occurrences of a pitcher saving 35 or more games, Shakon's 2.34 ERA in games where he earned a save ranks as the 8th highest. In layman's terms, even when Shakon earned a save, he was still historically not great. And for those wondering about the aftermath of this season, Shakon was immediately put right back into the starting rotation in 2005, where he remained a starter for most of his career until he retired. In 2004, Colorado Rockies relief pitcher Shawn Chacon had one of the strangest and most unique seasons a reliever has ever had. It was historically a terrible season, and yet he had a respectable 35 saves. We may never see something like this happen ever again.